Ladies and gents, we are live for a Buffalo Sports Q&A. You guys that tune into the podcast today, you guys tune in, you ask me your questions, of course, and I give you guys my answers. This is a Buffalo Sports edition, so anything goes. Bills and Sabres, solely focusing on, you know what, you can throw some Bandits questions out there. Shout out to the NLL champion Buffalo Bandits. And you know what? I want to start the show off talking about that topic because I have yet to talk about it on the podcast thus far. So, in regards to the Buffalo Bandits, right, winning the NLL championship, good buddy of mine, Eric Ellis, and I went to the game kind of last minute. And I want to say a few things here in terms of firing away some comments here. I'll let you guys trickle in here as I start the show. You know, talking about the Bandits is an interesting topic because I think right now the National Lacrosse League is at its point where it's getting bigger. I'm starting to notice far more coverage, whether it's ESPN, you know, some mainstream analysts out there that I know pretty well, covering the sport of lacrosse, and in particular the NLL, the National Lacrosse League. And it's pretty awesome that the Buffalo Bandits were able to finally, you know, hit the nail on the head and get it done. Third straight year in a row, being in the National Lacrosse League Championship, and they had come up short two times, once against Saskatchewan, and then of course last year against Colorado. They're facing the Colorado Mammoth yet again, and they were able to get it done. So I'm really happy for the Buffalo Bandits that, you know, guys like Dane Smith and Josh Byrne, Alex Vick as well. I really was excited for those three players as well as Johnny Tavares, somebody that, you know, I obviously have a ton of respect for in terms of what he did for the sport of lacrosse. And most definitely feeling as if they're finally getting the respect that they deserve. So hopping on here today, the whole purpose of this is to make this as interactive as possible. I want everybody to hop on here and comment some questions, comment some statements, comment some thoughts on the Buffalo Bills or the Buffalo Sabres. Because there's a lot to talk about right now. Even though we're in the off season, there's no games going on. There's still a lot of topics to talk about. I think especially with the Sabres right now as we get closer and closer to the NHL draft. Really looking forward to that. Greatly looking forward to that, actually. Greatly looking forward to seeing what the Sabres do with the pick and seeing what's going on with the free agency. We're not even at that point yet where the Stanley Cup is even finished. Stanley Cup hasn't even been completed yet. And yet, once it is completed, 2 weeks later, the NHL draft. So I'm going to get to the first question of the day. Or the first statement. Jennifer Leclerc says that she heard the atmosphere was amazing there that night, and I can attest to that being there. It was the loudest I had ever heard KeyBank Center, by far. The loudest I've ever heard the place, probably since the Sabres and their playoff run. That was the most upbeat, you know, supercharged that I had ever heard it, and it was great. And it made me think the whole time I'm in that arena, it made me think to myself, man, I can't wait for when the Sabres are actually legitimate, and they're at that point where, you know, they're obviously hosting playoff games as well, and we can get that vibe back for the Buffalo Sabres, hopefully sooner rather than later. She also states that the Sabres' future is so bright. I'd like to kind of follow up with her on that and see what makes her think that. I'm curious, just opinion-wise, what makes her think that it is so bright? Is there a particular player that she feels like can really put the Sabres over the top? You know, I would agree with her statement 100% that their future is pretty bright. I think for the first time in a long time, you got guys on that team that actually enjoy being a part of the roster, enjoy being a part of the culture that is Buffalo and the sports scene that it provides. Guys like Alex Tuck go without saying in terms of what they're able to accomplish. I feel really the sky's the limit based on the just overall positive morale that team has. And a big factor within that, you know, facet of the situation is the fact that they have a goalie. and that goalie being Devin Levi, that goalie being UPL, two young goalies. A lot of the sports beat is questioning whether or not Devin Levi or UPL should be a tandem or not. I liked that idea. I felt like it was lockstep with what Kevin Adams has preached, and he's practicing what he preached, where he's allowing these young guys to get a unique opportunity to compete against one another, 1A, 1B, you name it, however you want to look at it, no matter who you think is better out of the two. They're both young and they're both developing, and I feel like I liked that. Whereas now you have, some talk in the media about the Sabres potentially going out and getting a goalie, Cal Hellebuck or Carter Hart, Jonathan Quick. I've heard those names thrown around. And as far as kind of replacing the veteran presence that is Craig Anderson, but I think a lot of people are forgetting about Eric Comrie. He's a name that is one to throw in there as well, as far as that veteran type presence that could really help a player like Devin Levi, could really help a player like UPL. Just kind of relieve a little bit of the stress, relieve a little bit of the tension, just in terms of the expectations that both of those guys have, on their shoulders. I think Devin Levi especially, but I really liked what they did towards the tail end of the year with Levi and starting him. Over and over again. It seemed like they started him over and over and over again. And to Jennifer's last comment, I completely agree with her. She says they want to be in Buffalo, which is a huge reason why they're seeing this recent success, I think. And in terms of that recent success, Rob Mullen asked me an awesome question. And Rob Mullen has always wanted to communicate with me, and I really appreciate it. He said, is the recent success of the Sabres attributed solely to Devin Levi, or what is the real outlook of the team going into the draft and next season? Well, I wouldn't say the recent success is solely due to Devin Levi, but I definitely think Devin Levi helped. Just talking about that with Jennifer on the show here, in terms of some of the statements she made in regards to the goalie and things like that. I feel like Devin Levi is the first goalie they've had in a long time that gives them a chance to win every single night. The consistency was there, but it was in a very small sample size. So I want to pump the brakes a little bit on the expectations for Devin Levi to just come out and start 50 games a year. That's not necessarily what I would want the Sabres to do in terms of putting all those big, heavy expectations on their young goaltender. I think in hockey, you do have to have a little bit of a buffer, whether it's a legitimate veteran backup or just somebody that, obviously if Levi's out, he's off for a night, that backup can come in and be pretty much not missing a beat from Levi. There's no drop off necessarily going in that direction. But I can definitely attest to being there as well in this moment where Devin Levi got his first start against the New York Rangers. I really wanted to go to that game. It was a game that situation was pretty interesting. The story behind it, I had heard that Levi was going to potentially start probably a few, 3-4 days prior to them actually announcing it. And I thought, man, I'd like to get my hands on some tickets to this game. And then I procrastinated, didn't know if I could go. And then the tickets, when they announced that Levi was actually starting, the tickets skyrocketed in price. So it was like, well, what can I do? What am I doing? So I was actually at Barville North, out on off of Transit there, and I looked at some apps and I saw that there was Vivid, and Vivid, had really, really low prices on tickets. So I went on Vivid and I bought 2 tickets to go to the game, and it was really fun to see the arena light up every time Levi had a big save against a really good Rangers team at the time. At that point in the season, they were doing really well. They just acquired Patrick Kane, and Buffalo ended up winning that game off of a Jeff Skinner overtime winner, and that was great. It was a great atmosphere, and it got me thinking. The closest thing I can remember to that would be Ryan Miller or Dominik Hasek, and I'm not saying that Devin Levi is the next version of either one of those guys, but he plays to the fans. He plays to the level. He has an intensity about him that I think every goalie that's ever been great in the NHL has that. They have that type of unique edge that whether it's him meditating or whether it's Ryan Miller standing on the bench, Dominik Hasek would do these crazy stretches to get into the zone prior to a face-off and things like that. So I feel really good about the future of the team, and I do feel really good about Devin Levi. But the recent success, in terms of the recent success, I definitely feel that they have a great core group of players. Tage Thompson being one of them, Alex Tuck being another, and Rasmus Dahlin, who I think has taken major strides in the last 2 years to being one of the best young defensemen in the National Hockey League. And I think he is going to get an extension that's going to be announced, I think, in the new league year when the calendar flips to the new league year. I think that could be one of the first headlines that we'll read, that the Sabres extend Rasmus Dahlin for, upwards of 8 years, 80 million, somewhere in that range. That's what I've been hearing and reading. So that's pretty great, to get him on board here for the long haul. I think so. I know there's still Dahlin detractors out there, but I'm not one of them. I really like him a lot. I think Donnie Granato has done a wonderful job of giving him his confidence back that was largely taken away from him by, the whole Ralph Kruger era, as it was with Jeff Skinner, who Jeff Skinner in his own right has upped the tempo. That first line, Skinner, Tuck, Thompson, has been great. They honestly, I feel like you cannot deviate away from that line at any point. That line is just rock steady and productive each and every night. And then you throw in the fact that they have Dylan Cousins, Jack Quinn, JJ Paterka, the kids line that was around early in the season that showed glimpses of greatness. And then, Casey Middlestat towards the tail end of the year, I thought he was really a force to be reckoned with. He was one of the best forwards in the league the last 3 months of the season. So, it's honestly, their wealth of young talent is really astonishing. I don't think there's a team with as young of talent as them in the entire NHL, including, the Florida Panthers and the Vegas Golden Knights, because you got to look at it this way. The Sabres are that talented with players that are young, and yet, those teams are talented with players that are somewhat young, but a lot of veterans on those teams as well. So, I feel that they will have their mix of both between the vets and the young guns. We'll see what happens there. But, obviously, first and foremost, they did bring back Kyle Okposo, which, initially I was pretty shocked by that. I did not anticipate that they'd bring him back, and it's not anything against Kyle Okposo. I just didn't feel like Kyle Okposo was ready to make a decision yet on whether he wanted to play. But the first thing that he stated was that, yeah, I am ready to play. I do want to play. I am ready to be a Sabre again and play in the league. I got one year at a time, but more likely than not, I think it's 1 year left in him to just be around these guys and be a key contributor to their production, development, of course, and moving forward. The expectations for me heading into next season, to Rob Mullen's point, is playoffs. I think the playoffs they were 1 point away last year. They would have taken Florida's playoff spot had they made the playoffs. And Florida's in the Stanley Cup Finals. So with hockey, you just never know. You never know how big a leap a team can take. There's no leap that is too big in the National Hockey League, in my opinion. And, I think if the Buffalo Sabres were to make the playoffs in the 23-24 season, I think that would be a team that the Eastern Conference would look at and say, man, that's the team we don't want to play in the playoffs, because nobody would have expectations that the Sabres would make the playoffs and win a series. So anything that the Sabres do outside of that, outside of just making the playoffs, is an additional bonus. And I mean, the fact that they had the 5th most goals allowed, largely without their future goalie, Devin Levi, playing. He only played about 10 games at the tail end of the year. But they were 3rd in the National Hockey League in goals. If they could flip the script on that a little bit, obviously still be top 5 in goals. Those players are still here. But if their goaltending was more consistent, that's a playoff team. If their goaltending is 15 spots better, they're a playoff team. So, I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens here. It seems like they're really keen on Levi getting a lot of starts, but I think there could be a potential situation where they do bring in a Kel Hellebuck and he plays ahead of Levi. Levi plays under him, learns from him, and potentially UPL could be traded. And listen, I really like UPL. I think there's a lot to like there, but I just, there's only 2 goalies that you can have at a time, and Devin Levi is the man. I really think the kid is the future, and he's a special goalie, and I think UPL is good too, but Would not be shocked if they did move on from him if they were to bring in a Cal Hellebuck on a multi-year deal, which seems like that's the rumor right now. So let's get to some Bills questions. I know I got some here in my inbox, so I'm going to those. No, was not a Bills question. Brooke McBride, she submitted me a Sabres question. She said, "What do I think the Sabres need?" So I talked about a veteran goalie. The next thing that I'd say that they need is another defenseman, and that call me crazy on that, but you have Darlene and you have Owen Power. Those guys are not typically on the same line together. They're spread out, they're balanced, in terms of the lines that Donnie Granato puts forth. But there were signs that Henry Yokoharu, I didn't really like what I saw from him in moments last year. And obviously I think they need a I don't want to say a grinder of a defenseman, but they don't really have a guy outside of Matthias Samuelsson that's really a grinder that really can wear on teams at the D-core. Owen Power is largely an offensive defenseman. Rasmus Dahlin is, I think, one of the best offensive defensemen in the NHL. That's probably what makes him, what he is one of the best, young guns in the NHL as far as, defensemen go. But, I think they need a guy, another type of Matthias Samuelsson or Matthias. Hopefully I said it right. In terms of their future too, like last year, going back to the past here, Samuelsson was hurt for a stretch of time and they really suffered. The Sabres, they fell off. And a lot of the guys on the team in the locker room were stating that it was largely due to that he's such a big minutes eater on their team that they thought they needed to find another guy to take that spot. And a key addition to this team that they drafted a couple years back is Ryan Johnson, a defenseman, a young defenseman from Minnesota. I'm really curious to see what he brings to the table as far as if he's on this team as a young gun with a bunch of young guns, will he fit? Will all the same guys type of question fit? I don't know. And this is another thorn in my side. When the NHL put together this collective bargaining agreement, essentially, and they gave a lot of power to young National Hockey League players, it really leveraged the power in the hands of the players, and it took a lot of power away from the teams. And what I mean by that is, in this situation, the Sabres draft Ryan Johnson, and they had to deliberate with him for 2-3 years to see if he wanted to play NHL hockey for the Buffalo Sabres. That, to me, is very frustrating. Not just because I'm a Sabres fan, but it happens all throughout the league. And in the National Football League, you get drafted, you're there for at least 4 years, and I think that's how it should be. Of course, unless you're Eli Manning. But that's in a nutshell. I think another defenseman. Could that defenseman already be on the team? And Ryan Johnson. We'll find out. We'll find out as we get through. The blue and gold games and things like that. I think free agency is going to be very interesting for the Sabres. I'm not expecting the Sabres to be major, quote unquote players in free agency, but I am expecting that they will make some additions. This team is ready, willing, and able to make the playoffs. And I think that they can easily. So I'm really pumped up for the Sabres season this year. I went to about 5 or 6 games during the regular season last year, and each one of them was more memorable than the next, or than the last, I should say. And it's going to be a fun season. It's going to be really fun. So in terms of a Buffalo Bills question that I did receive, it was in regards to the last talking point that I had in yesterday's show, where I talked about the fact that Josh Allen is the now 2024 Madden NFL 24, I should say, cover athlete. And how big of a deal that is, it just goes without saying. It's a huge deal. It's a massive deal in terms of what this does to the Bills franchise, what it brings notoriety to the Buffalo Bills, the Buffalo area, the Buffalo fans, which for the first time in Madden NFL video game history, a fan base was featured on the cover, the deluxe edition, mind you, of Madden NFL. And I'm really, really happy for that. I think that's the coolest part about this whole thing. But getting a lot of questions about whether or not the Buffalo Bills are cursed heading into this season with Josh Allen as the Madden cover athlete. And I want to go back a couple years back to the Madden cover curse. Now, this Madden curse was a legitimate thing for a long time. I really, really do think it was a legitimate thing. It was eerie how odd it was that each player that was on the cover really did not live up to that hype that upcoming season. So the year 2000, John Madden was on the cover with Detroit Lions running back Barry Sanders. And it's no secret that Barry Sanders is one of the best, one of the greatest running backs to play the game. But his retirement was unexpected, controversial, soon. Came in July of 99. He'd only played, 7 or 8 years in the league. And he was never in the actual Madden game that year due to the fact that he retired. They actually changed the cover to Green Bay Packers running back Dorsey Levens for an alternate version of the game due to the fact that Barry Sanders was retired. So that, to me, is pretty strange, right? Premature retirement when he's on the Madden cover, pretty odd. That's a weird way to get things started. 2001, you saw the Tennessee Titans running back Eddie George at the time on the cover. George went on to rush for more than 1,500 yards in his cover season, but he also had a career-high lost amount of fumbles, and he fumbled in the Titans' season-ending playoff game and averaged 3.4 yards per carry for the rest of his career. So from that point on, being on the Madden cover, he didn't play up to the level that he had prior to being on the Madden cover. 2002, Minnesota Vikings quarterback Dante Culpepper. I was a big Dante Culpepper fan. My dad was a big Dante Culpepper fan. We both liked him. After throwing for 33 touchdowns and going 11-5 as a first-time starter in 2000, Culpepper took a nosedive during his cover season, and quote, nosedive. This is on the CBS Sports page. Injuries cost him 6 games, and he fumbled 16 times. Threw just 14 touchdowns compared to 13 picks, and went 4-7 in his next few starts. And a key factor in the name of Dante Culpepper that I want to talk about is the fact that the Miami Dolphins with Nick Saban went with Dante Culpepper over Drew Brees. We know how that turned out. Thank God for that fact, right? As a Bills fan, thank God that the Dolphins went with Dante Culpepper instead of Drew Brees. Cursed for sure. 2003, my favorite Madden for quite some time. The cover had Marshall Faulk on it. This was when Madden was really hitting its stride. 2003, 2004, we'll get to in a minute. But 2003, Marshall Faulk, a surefire Hall of Famer, of course, one of the best running backs I've ever seen, entered his cover season as a 5 straight 1,000-yard rusher and had 3 straight 1,300-yard campaigns. 2002, Faulk wore down, broke down from those previous seasons, much like we've seen in shades with guys like Christian McCaffrey, and he missed 6 games, never topped 1,000 yards ever again from that point forward in his career. So pretty odd. And then in 2004, as I briefly mentioned, this Madden was one of the best games, video games, period, in my opinion. Michael Vick on the cover. Vick was prime time. Vick was big dollars for the NFL at that time. Big business for the NFL at that time. For that generation, I was 11, 12 years old at that time. Not to date myself, but that was prime football years for me. And Michael Vick, obviously unstoppable in the game, a 99 speed, a 99 acceleration, the closest thing to Tecmo Bowl with Bo Jackson, in my opinion, in terms of Madden, football game, video game lore, the prowess that he had in that game. If you got him on your team in that game, you were unbeatable. So obviously Vic had a great career. He really did. There's a part of it that really puts a stain on his legacy, as it should, in terms of the dog fighting and everything. But unstoppable, of course. And he was the first overall pick out of ET, blew up with the Falcons. The dog fighting thing obviously put a tailspin in his career, but he did have a revival in Philadelphia for a short time. that was pretty cool. But in terms of the Madden cover, 2004, the biggest year of his career. The next year, he did fracture his fibula, missed the entire rest of the season. So crazy. 4 years later, he was in jail. 2005, Ray Lewis, one of the greatest linebackers of all time. The interception total, I remember actually reading about this a few years ago. His interception total dropped from 6 to 0 from 04 to 05, his cover year. Ravens didn't even make the playoffs. He still statistically had a Ray Lewis type year where he had a gazillion tackles and missed some time, though, that next season. So maybe not as cursed as some of the other guys, but definitely kind of odd that the Ravens missed the playoffs that one year that Lewis was on the cover. Then 2006, the cover for Madden 05, pardon me, 06, was Donovan McNabb. And this was another guy that I really liked growing up. Another player that was really great for the team that he played for, that he was drafted by, the Philadelphia Eagles. McNabb was at his peak. They were coming off of that Super Bowl run with T.O., and then he had the blown ACL the next season. Scuffled with T.O. on the sidelines, blew out his knee, obviously playing games, but went on to miss 8 games over the next 2 years as well, beyond the time that he missed in 2006. A player that, you guys will say was a one-hit wonder in 2007, Sean Alexander. And this is a guy that I do think in his prime is one of those running backs that I'd say is one of the best running backs I've ever seen, just in terms of my eyeballs, like from my vantage point, one of the best running backs I've ever seen. He entered the cover year with 5 straight 1,000-yard seasons. Dominance, obviously. 2006, though, the rushing total dropped from 1,880 yards to 896 yards. 2 years later, he was out of the NFL. He was a Washington Redskins at the time washout. The Washington Redskins signed him, and he was terrible after that. So another washout for the Redskins at the time. 2008, another player that I really liked in college, Vince Young out of UT, University of Texas, of course. He was the Offensive Rookie of the Year in 2006 for his cover year. Young threw just 9 touchdowns compared to 17 interceptions his sophomore season, missed a game and earned a seat on the bench for 2008 and never looked back, never got the starting job back again. 2009, the Packers quarterback at the time, Brett Favre, turned Jets quarterback. EA began by making Favre the cover athlete as a tribute to his then retired Packers career, which had just ended, of course. Then Favre forced his way out of retirement, the drama all July, all August long, as he was then traded to the Jets. All he did there was throw for 22 interceptions and hurt his shoulder before moving on to Minnesota in a one-and-done year with the New York Jets. 2000, and maybe foreshadowing for Aaron Rodgers. 2010, the Arizona Cardinals wide receiver Larry Fitzgerald and Steelers safety Troy Polamalu. These were the 2 best players outside of Tom Brady in the NFL at that time, regardless of position, outside of Brady and Peyton. I always had hoped that they would put together a Brady Manning cover. They never did. Shame on them. Maybe eventually they will, as a tribute to both of those legends. Now, Fitzgerald had one of those Pro Bowl seasons that he always had, but Polamalu, on the other hand, missed a lot of time, and obviously was at that point where it seemed like he continued to get hurt from there on out. Then the Saints with quarterback Drew Brees in 2011, throwing 33 TDs, earning another Pro Bowl selection. Good stuff, but Brees had what constitutes as an off year the season that he graced the cover, throwing a career-high franchise record 22 interceptions. Peyton Hillis, Calvin Johnson, Adrian Peterson, Richard Sherman, Odell Beckham, Rob Gronkowski, all of those guys had seasons that they were hurt in or they were never the same. And there were reasons off the field, in the case of Adrian Peterson, as to why he was a massive distraction there on out in Minnesota. Then there were recent years where Tom Brady was on the cover, no curse there. He's immune to any curse, immune to anything, really. The last year, though, that I could say that there was a curse associated was Antonio Brown. I think that's the mic drop Madden NFL curse moment went out with a bang with Antonio Brown. The man is literally insane now. And I don't say that in a joking manner and in the slightest, but to provide you context, Antonio Brown would have been one of the best receivers in NFL history. His numbers the first 6-7 years of his NFL career only rivaled Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, and T.O., who are the three best statistically receivers, the three best statistical receivers in the National Football League. And Antonio Brown rivaled those guys, really did. And after he was on the Madden cover, his whole career went into a tailspin, going from the Raiders, that whole situation, the Patriots, that whole situation, the Bucks, that whole situation. He was a true cancer in every sense of the word. And you compare a guy like Antonio Brown to T.O. in terms of being a team cancer. To me, Antonio Brown is the worst of the worst as far as being a team cancer to any team that he played for. Definitely cursed. And then 2020 had Pat Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. They had great seasons. Tom Brady, great season as well. Another one. And then last year, of course, the man, John Madden. Really happy that they put him on the cover, obviously, to pay tribute to him after his passing shortly after Christmas Day. That was sad. Obviously, John Madden, one of the heroes of mine in relations to football. So, will Josh Allen experience a downturn statistically because of this? I doubt it. I really do. Far more often than not, some guys have, some guys haven't. It's been a 50-50, but regardless, a fun topic to end the show with as well. I did get a couple Bills questions from Brooke McBride. She said, who else do you think the Bills are going to target? I would not be shocked if DeAndre did come. It's just a matter of how good these visits go or don't go initially for DeAndre. There you have it. The Sports Talk Saturday Q&A. I'm Ryan Thomas. Thanks for tuning in to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast.